Father, I thank you ever so kindly for allowing us to gather this morning. Thank you that you have allowed us to do so within our right minds. As we seek to understand a portion of your word now, I ask for clarity of thought on the part of the speaker and clarity of thought on the part of the learners. I ask that you will help that at the close of the session we would have gained insight into your truths to the end that we may prepare for midnight. I ask that you watch over and keep us throughout the remaining portion of the day. I ask in Christ's name, amen.
So we went over a couple days ago the breakdown of Daniel 11 verses 1 through 39, and then I'm intending to take certain lines out of that chapter and treat them as their own line. So I didn't print out notes for everyone because the notes I'm printing out on this are incomplete, but I'll list out here if you can follow what I'm suggesting, that we're dissecting this chapter in order to study it out, and we went through together verses 1, 2, we put 3 and 4 together, we put 5 by itself, 6 through 9 together. But I'm saying that there's also other lines in there. And one of them that I have, and I want you can give any input on this, on something that I'm missing, and maybe you'll understand once I do it what I'm talking about. The 4 presidents as a line of prophecy in Daniel 11. You can find in verse 2, and then verse 16 through 22, being the 4 Roman rulers in conjunction with the 4 Persian rulers. I'm saying that the Greek kingdom, I'm not positive of what the significance of looking at the Greek kingdom just as the Greek kingdom represents, but that's verses 3 through 16. It's there. 3 obstacles that have to get overcome is verse 5 with verses 16 through 19. Pagan Rome overcomes 3 obstacles. And verses 40 to 43. Modern Rome overcomes 3 obstacles. And then Raphia to Panium is a line. I'm contending that this line here is probably the focus of all Bible prophecy, because it's in this history that you have verse 14 where the vision is established. You have lines where Sister White says, the working of the man of sin is the last scenes clearly revealed, emphasizing that it's the subject of the papacy that is what establishes the vision. So that somehow Raphia to Panium being verses 13 and 15, with verse 14 in the middle where the robbers of thy people are introduced. By the way, everyone know the robbers of thy people in verse 14, and also the robbers of thy people shall exalt themselves to establish the vision, but they will fall. One of the things you do there is you find that the robbers of thy people can be translated as the breakers of the people. And that allows you to go in and see that it's Rome that breaks and crushes with its iron feet. It connects you with Rome, the expression breakers of the people. But Sister Pam went in and looked at that word again, robbers of thy people. And she found the first, it's there. Everyone that's ever looked at it has probably looked right past it. But the first definition of robbers, what do you suppose it is? Don't say anything, Pam, all right? Let them think it through. It's not robbers or breakers. Okay, what?
It's called a son as a builder.
A builder. Okay, so if you're putting between the Battle of Rephaim and Panium, if papal Rome is forced to come to the aid of the papacy, it's also suggesting they're going to build with the United States. They're going to build it, start a work together, which is interesting. There is a theme of military and economic buildup. And that's in verses, this would be verse 13 through 15. This is verse 13 through 15, 21 through 28, and 37 through 39. A lot of witnesses to that. Treaties. A sister sent in a response to what we said about the treaties. This is in verse 23 through 27. You can find the treaties emphasis. But the sister sent in 2 Chronicles 16, 1 through 14. We can look at that in a minute. I'm contending that Rome is forced, if that's the right way to express it, forced. Pompey's forced to deal with the rebellion in Jerusalem. Julius Caesar's forced to deal with the rebellion in Egypt. Octavius forced to deal with the rebellion of Mark Antony. And so that's verses 14 and 16 through 20. And the time appointed is a subject that's mentioned more than once. And I'm also putting in this is in and returnings. These returnings seem worth understanding. There's one that's a bit awkward. So in each of these verses, or not in each, in several of these places, there's unresolved, at least unresolved in my mind, things that are worth trying to dig out what they represent. But let's start with what Sister Elaine sent in. Correct me if I'm wrong, but I'm pretty sure that we've already put in the record that from Jeroboam 1, and I don't remember all the 7 kings, but the last one down here, the first 7 kings, I think it goes to Ahab. Does anyone remember that? Who the first 7 kings of the northern tribe are? Okay, the reason I presented that publicly not so long ago, and the reason that I was doing it was to show that the beginning, the first 7 kings of Israel and the first 7 kings of Judah show the joining of the 2 sticks, just like the last 7 kings of Israel and Judah do, and they do it at the same point in time. They do it at the midnight cry to the Sunday law with the waymarks. But in that presentation, if I recall right, this is Israel. In Judah, Asa reigned the entire time. Does anybody remember that? I'm sure it was Asa. Okay, so we'd have to go back in and look at that study to pull all that back into our consideration. But this passage that Sister Elaine sent in has to do with Asa. So it would probably, if you know what I'm referencing here, it was a study where we were showing that the breaking of the sticks takes place right here. You have Saul, David, then Solomon, and then the split up in Rehoboam and Jeroboam. It's time period. But this particular king of Judah, he actually lived when all the first 7 kings lived, and there's something to that. that is left unresolved. But in terms of treaties, if you go to 2 Chronicles 16, 1 through 4, and it's not that I have any definite insight on this, but it is kind of interesting, especially when it's connected with Asa. So let's refresh ourselves. In verse 23, the pioneers address the League of the Jews, 161 to 158, in verse 20. It's verse 23 of Daniel 11, right? And from this point on, the next verse, verse 24, the one that comes in peaceably, which we're saying is Donald Trump, based upon verse 22, where he comes in peaceably. It's in that verse where he does things that his fathers and his fathers' fathers have never done, and we're arguing that what he's doing is he's doing as Rome did. He's conquering the world not necessarily through military strength, but through treaties and alliances that he's formed, that has been typified by Rome. So verse 23, it's the treaty with the Jews and the Romans, but the next verse is talking about treaty making, if that's the right way to say it. So when we were dealing with that, Sister Elaine came across this. 2 Chronicles 16, verses 1, it's the entire chapter. So let's take 2 verses each. And what she's noting is that Asa is going to form an alliance. And one of the things that jumped out at me, if this is an illustration of the league with the Jews in this history we're dealing with, is there's a pronouncement on Asa that says once you enter into this alliance, and we're putting the alliance at midnight, Raphia, the league with the Jews. So if this is an illustration in this story of this league, one of the things it says is that Asa was going to have war all the days now of his life. So it's saying that from here on out, wars will rage, like Sister White says. And this would be the starting point of just of World War III, probably, is the way a historian would say it. So I'll take the first 2 verses. This is 2 Chronicles 16, the entire chapter. In the 6th and 30th year of the reign of Asa, Baasha, king of Israel, came up against Judah and built Ramah, to the intent that he might let none go out or come in to Asa, king of Judah. Then Asa brought out silver and gold out of the treasures of the house of the Lord and out of the king's house, and sent to Ben-Hadad, king of Syria, that dwelt at Damascus, saying,
There is a
League.
league between me and thee, as there was between my father and thy father. Behold, I have sent thee silver and gold. Go bring the league with Baasha, king of Israel, that he may depart from me. And Ben-Hadad, hearkened unto King
Asa.
and sent the captains of his armies against the cities of Israel, and they smote
Ijon.
And Dan, and
Abel-maim.
and all the store cities of
Naphtali.
And it came to pass when Baasha had heard it, he left off building of Ramah and let his work cease. Then Asa the king took all Judah, and they carried away the stones of Ramah and the timber thereof, where Baasha was building, and he built therewith Geba and Mizpah.
And at that time Hanani the seer came to Asa king of Judah, and said unto him, Because thou hast relied on the king of Syria, and not relied on the Lord thy God, therefore is the host of the king of Syria escaped out of thy hand. Were not the Ethiopians and the Lubims a huge host, with very many chariots and horsemen? Yet, because thou didst rely on the Lord, he delivered them into thine hand.
For the eyes of the Lord run to and fro throughout the whole earth, to shew himself strong in the behalf of them whose heart is perfect toward him. Herein thou hast done foolishly, therefore from henceforth thou shalt have wars. Then Asa was wroth with the seer, and put him in a prison house, for he was in a rage with him because of this thing, and Asa oppressed some of the people the same time.
And behold, the acts of Asa, first and last, lo, they are written in the book of the kings of Judah and Israel. And Asa in the 39th year of his reign was diseased in his feet, until his disease was exceeding great. Yet in his disease he sought not to the Lord, but to the physicians.
And Asa slept with his fathers, and died in the 41st year of his reign. And they buried him in his own sepulchres, which he had made for himself in the city of David, and laid him in the bed which was filled with sweet odors and diverse kinds of spices, prepared by the apothecary's art, and they made a very great burning for him.
So to really pull this into a prophetic focus, we should probably go back in and look closely about the breaking apart of the two sticks here in this history. But we're usually familiar with the two sticks coming together at the end, because we've dealt with that over and over again for some time. Jeroboam 1 in this history lines up with Jeroboam 2, where the two sticks are joined together at the end of time. Does anyone remember what waymark Jeroboam 2 is? Because it's the same one as Jeroboam 1. It's the midnight cry. Okay, so the midnight cry has been typified by midnight. Not to get, I don't have any answers for this, but I'm going to at least think it through. So what's going on at the midnight cry has been typified back here. We're putting the league with the Jews in the history we're dealing with from Daniel 11 here at midnight. But that would be typifying the league here too, right? Some kind of agreement here. But in any case, when Asa, and you can see some prophetic stuff in there if you can figure it out. The king of the north, Israel, is building a city. When this league takes place, stops building the city. Asa takes the construction materials from that city, and he goes and builds his own city. There's something going on there. There's something going on with Asa down here in this part of his life that he gets crippled. There's a crippling that goes on here, but it seems like Asa's crippling here. But if this is a fractal, then but in any case, one thing, the reason I thought it might be worth putting this in, at just the one point, Asa in one verse is called a foolish virgin. It's in connection with the eyes of the Lord running to and fro, which is a prophetic symbol, but that there was war. If this is the league for him, I'm assuming, and there's war from then on out. And from Raphia to Peniam, in between, there may not be war, but the whole story is they're preparing for war, so it's the same difference. And when you get to Peniam, which is also Actium, as we're applying it, because there's going to be a doubling of battles, you're going onward to the Sunday law, where there's going to be, at the time appointed, 360 years later at the Sunday law, Islam's going to strike. So there's warfare all the way through. So that story of Asa must have some light to shed in here about the league. Okay, just putting that in place for your thoughts. Now, you probably don't have your notes from what you did the 10-minute presentation, do you? And what was your presentation on again? Remind me.
Peace agreements that are out there.
The peace agreements. That's this here.
Yeah, that's it.
So my intent is, I'm forewarning all 5 of you that had assignments, that on Sunday we'll go and take some time. You had 10 minutes, but you were also practicing on how as a teacher, to take a whole bunch of material and summarize it down into 10 minutes, just for the technique of how to do that, because you're not always going to get hours and hours to present the message. But on Sunday, we'll take your input that you guys have and plug it into these various lines. But I want to go now. I've addressed Sister Elaine's input. This here, I started this morning, and I'm not complete on what I was looking for. I was just starting. This is Keys of This Blood. When I first got into teaching this stuff publicly, these things, every Adventist that was teaching prophecy was using this book. This book is written by Malachi Martin. He's now deceased, but he was a Vatican insider. He was a Jesuit, well-known Jesuit author, and he was a close working relationship with John Paul II, the Pope that's the Pope when the Soviet Union comes down. And many Adventists that would present this book publicly would argue that this is the Catholic version of the Great Controversy, because this is the Catholic version of how they're going to take control of the world, and they're saying that they're in a 3-way struggle with the Soviet Union and the United States. Or in our terminology, the beast is in a struggle with the dragon and the false prophet to take control of the world. So as Malachi Martin goes through and he tells how this is going to happen, there's so many things that are like the same thing you see in the Great Controversy, only it's from the Catholic perspective, that everyone was using this book back then, even people that weren't seeing anything of significance in Daniel 11:40-45. But one of the reasons that there's lots of reasons I would use this book. One of the reasons that I just thought of as I said that is in this book, Malachi Martin shows that the worldview of Pope John Paul II is based upon the prophecies of Fatima. Okay, he's saying that everything that John Paul II was doing is based upon the predictions that came from these 3 children in Fatima, Portugal, back in 1917. So it's structured around that. But if you look at this in the bookshelf, the title is The Keys of This Blood. But if you get to the title page, there's a subtitle that isn't on the outside, and the subtitle is my point. Malachi Martin, this is the title, the full title. The Keys of This Blood. The struggle for world dominion between Pope John Paul II, Michael Gorbachev, and the capitalist West. And my point is, whether we have ever understood it or not, Catholicism hates capitalism, and it defines the West as the capitalist West. And I have several books that they don't address only that, but prove that capitalism is something that Catholicism hates. It just hates. This book has lots of nice insights on Daniel 11:40-45. But what he's saying in this book, a basic outline, is that the Soviet Union, the United States, and the Catholic Church is in a 3-way race, and he'll say it just like that, to take control of the world. And he makes a prediction. This is when the Soviet Union, I don't remember, I'll look it up when this is printed. He makes a prediction that this is 1990, okay? But it had to be written well before that, because this is when the Soviet Union's coming down. He makes the prediction in this book that the Soviet Union's going to be swept away, and that ultimately the Catholic Church is going to prevail over the capitalist West, United States. And so I never thought about it until here recently, in the past few days. This is part of the proof that they thought when the Soviet Union was swept away that the King of the South was gone, and they didn't see it. But I just wanted you to see that the claims I made the other day about capitalism being such an affront to Catholicism, that it's a valid thing that they discuss. I had another book there called The Catholic Ethic and the Capitalist West, or something like that. I mean, it's really an issue which would explain, in my mind, verses 37, 38, and 39. So let's go to 37, 38, 39 in Daniel 11. Or let me go through a few things first. This is another thing, and we can go through this, and you can put your own input on it. Don't leave this up to me. Well, I want to go through these verses in Daniel 11 and isolate the things that we're uncertain about, that still need to be resolved, because there's a lot of stuff in here I think that's been resolved, but there's still some loose ends that are hanging there. And I can scan down through here and point out what I mean. In verse 15, so the king of the north shall come and cast up a mount and take the most fenced cities, and the arms of the south shall not withstand, neither his chosen people. Okay, so in verse 15, we're understanding that verse 15, the king of the south is Russia. The king of the north is the United States. Verse 15, I'd like to know whose chosen people are. Any ideas already in your mind? Who would that be? Who was it in history? Who does Uriah Smith say it was in history?
One of his generals, if I remember well, he sent an army with the general to try to take the city that the king of the north had taken, but he could not withstand the king of the north, and they were siege. This general was with his army was siege in a city where he could not get out. Only if they get out of the city naked, completely naked.
Anyone else read that same history? So that seems familiar with me. Where did you get that? You didn't get that out of Uriah Smith.
There is also, I think, Temple, the compilation book also helped me, I think.
Pat Temple's
Yeah.
Daniel and the Revelation. Okay, so assuming that Brother Vadim is correct, his chosen people is a general that was an ally that was supposed to support him. To support who? The king of the south or the king of the north?
The king of the south.
Okay, so
And he was a Macedonian, if I'm not wrong. This general was a
Macedonian.
yeah.
Was it Philip?
No, I have to.
Okay, so that's what we should be looking for then, if this is correct history, is that Russia's got some kind of ally that he thought that they were expecting to come and help him at the Battle of Panium. But he's somehow checkmated where he can't come and help. Right? Who would his ally be? Oh, I got to figure that one out. Okay, so, pardon me?
Iran or China.
Iran or China? Okay. There's maybe a logic there, but we got to have a second witness. Who was it that was doing the women in these verses? Was that that was you? Okay, so verse 17. Who's the daughter of woman in verse 17? I mean, we know it's Cleopatra. Is it Cleopatra? And how does he corrupt her? She was the corrupt one as far as I can tell. She's the one that has herself hauled in, wrapped up in a carpet, and exposes herself to him. What did he do to corrupt her?
Isn't there more than one Cleopatra?
More than one Cleopatra. Yes, there's definitely more than one Cleopatra. But this is the Cleopatra, isn't it?
Cleopatra the 7th.
Pardon me?
Cleopatra the 7th.
This is Cleopatra the 7th.
Yeah, if I'm not wrong.
Yeah.
That's interesting. But we're unsure. You seemed a little bit hesitant on that, so I'll put a question mark there. So, in verse 17, Brother Luke, what's represented there? You can give us some more detail on Sunday if you don't have just a simple thought. What do we typically identify a man and woman relationship that's corrupt as? Yeah, image of the beast. It's a symbol of the image of the beast. But here in this chapter, we've been coming to a different conclusion sometimes. What's the other conclusion? That it represents a treaty, an alliance, not necessarily the image of the beast perfectly, but an alliance. That's what it is in this verse, right? Is an alliance. Is it also the image of the beast? Was she in control of the relationship?
Her name means, I just looked it up because I forgot it, the glory of the Father.
Yep.
So when Cleopatra is corrupted by him, then the glory of the Father is corrupted.
He corrupts the glory of the Father, which is his character. How does Julius Caesar corrupt God's character in his relationship with Cleopatra? And what does that typify at the end of the world, more importantly? My brother, you don't know that one yet, do you? Okay, so...
Uriah Smith says that it's Cleopatra who corrupts Caesar.
That's what it appears to be, but it isn't how it reads in the verse, is it?
Yeah.
So is there some kind of Hebrew justification for reading it the other way?
I don't know.
Anyone know that answer? I mean,
the reference says to corrupt, not to corrupting her.
He should. Okay, well, the other question there is, who is he? He shall give him the daughter of woman. Who's the he that's given it to him, and who's the him that gets it? Right?
He's the king of the south.
He's the king of the south. For the beginning of the verse, he shall also set his face to enter with the strength of his whole kingdom. Who's that? That's Julius Caesar, right? Yes? We're all in agreement on that one. And upright ones with him. Who are the upright ones? That we want to know that one too. We know in history who the upright ones are. Who's the upright ones in history that come with Julius Caesar to Egypt? The Jews. How did they do that? An agreement or an alliance? I mean, was there some formal kind of treaty, or just they said you can pass over our land? I'm not challenging you. I'm uncertain about that. They allow them to pass through their land, which was the fastest way for them to get there, and they also sent some men with him, right?
And they get economic benefit from doing that.
Yeah, and when Uriah Smith comments on it, he said, had not the Jews allowed them to pass over, they could not have prevailed. So when you take that history into Daniel 11, verse 40, had not the glorious land come into connection with the papacy in the history of 1989, they could not have prevailed. But okay, so Julius Caesar is going to set his face to enter with the strength of his whole kingdom, with upright ones with him, whoever that's going to be at the end of time. Thus shall he do, and he shall give him the daughter of woman. I would say that he has to be Julius Caesar.
And him?
And who's the him? Do you, or
Maybe he shall give himself the daughter.
yeah, I could see that, but is that a justifiable definition of the word him, himself? He shall give him.
I mean, that's the history.
So the way we'd say it is he'd take the daughter of woman. He's going to go and take her. He's going into Egypt, he sees Cleopatra, he takes her for himself. That's how you'd say it in English.
Well, first Pompey takes charge of it. And then there's a war between Caesar and Pompey, and Caesar wins.
Okay, so Pompey takes Egypt first.
Yeah,
He's taking control, he's taking the responsibility of being her protector.
Right, he's placed under it, and the Roman people accepted the charge and appointed Pompey as guardian of the young heirs of Egypt.
Okay, so Pompey, but Julius Caesar, they're not in any kind of mutual agreement, right? They're going to fight with each other.
Yeah, they quarrel, having not long after broken out between Pompey and Caesar, and the famous battle of Pharsalia was fought between the two generals.
Okay, so you have that in your mind. Explain the verse to us. Walk through the verse and tell us who Pompey and Julius Caesar are.
Well, because Pompey is first, he should also set his face to enter.
So Pompey's the one that's setting his face to go into Egypt.
I think because he's the one that's been appointed.
Yeah, so I've been saying it wrong. I've been saying it was Julius Caesar.
Yeah, but it says here that he was the first one that was in charge of those.
Okay, so it's Pompey that's setting his face to go into the whole kingdom, and upright ones with him. Is that the story when the Jews helped? They were helping Pompey, or were they helping Julius Caesar? According to you, I would say it'd have to be Pompey, right? Okay. Thus shall he do.
Thus shall he do, and he shall give him the daughter of women for electing her.
It's-
And he shall give him.
She's thinking out loud.
Pompey being defeated fled into Egypt. Caesar immediately followed him thither, but before his arrival, Pompey was basely murdered by Ptolemy, whose guardian he had been appointed. So it was the one he was supposed to be the guardian of killed him, had him killed, and then Caesar was appointed. Therefore assumed the appointment which had been given to Pompey as guardian of Ptolemy and Cleopatra. And he found there was internal disturbances. So, and they became hostile to each other, to Ptolemy and Cleopatra.
Wasn't there a triumvirate at this time?
A what?
Weren't they in an alliance of three rulers of Rome? Triumvirate?
Yeah, Julius Caesar was part of a triumvirate at that time.
So wouldn't he be the three of them? Because it says, he shall set his face to enter with the strength of his whole kingdom. So the whole kingdom has to be Rome, I would have thought.
Yep.
So it's the he is
But
the beast.
the way that's related to by the pioneers, if I remember it right, is what they're saying is Rome is now going after the whole kingdom of Alexander the Great. The whole kingdom is representing that they're now taking the whole kingdom that had been represented by Alexander the Great's kingdom. It's more about them finalizing the conquering of the territory than it is speaking about their threefold kingdom of Rome. The whole kingdom is more a reference of north, south, east, west.
But isn't it the strength of his whole kingdom? So is the his the same as the he?
Yeah, I get your logic. I'm just saying I think the pioneers present it differently. Okay, so anyway, that's all I'm wanting to do here, is go through these verses and point out issues that need to be resolved. There's some issues in this verse that needs to be resolved. Somewhere all of us need to dig that out. I would say find one of the things that, because we brought Pompey into it, we need to know for sure is that did the Jews allow Pompey to cross their land and give them some soldiers to go into Egypt, or was it Julius Caesar that they allowed to cross and give some soldiers to go deal with the rebellion or the problem with Pompey? Because that would help define, the upright ones are coming with him. Whoever the upright ones come with, if it's Pompey or Julius Caesar, it's going to define that, right? Okay, so verse 18. I think I have some answers to that, but what's the reproach represented in verse 18? Because it's kind of weird, awkward or whatever. It says, a prince for his own behalf shall cause the reproach offered by him to cease. Without his own reproach he shall cause it to turn upon him. That's a pretty tricky phrase, right? And I argued that the reproach there is Isaiah 4:1. If you go to Isaiah 4:1, first person there can read it.
And in that day 7 women shall take hold of one man, saying, we will eat our own bread and wear our own apparel. Only let us be called by thy name to take away our reproach.
And that day is the last days, because this is the vision that begins in chapter 2, and it says, and it shall come to pass in the last days that the Lord's house will be established above the hills, in Isaiah 2:1, and this prophecy just continues on. So when it says, and in that day, go to Isaiah 2:1. The word of the Lord that Isaiah the son of Amos saw concerning Judah and Jerusalem, and it shall come to pass in the last days that the mountain of the Lord's house shall be established in the top of the mountains, and shall be exalted above the hills, and all nations shall flow unto it. When is that? When is the Lord's house established? Midnight cry. Church triumphant. So it's sort of beginning at midnight, and it's established at the midnight cry, but the perfect establishment of it is the Sunday law. But based upon the candlesticks, we're putting the center candlestick where? Midnight cry. And we're marking 9/11 as the first day of the first month, and when is it that Ezra gets to Jerusalem? Midnight cry, which is first day of the 5th month.
Don't we put the center of the candlestick between midnight and midnight cry?
Yeah, we do. Is that right?
Wow.
Who's we?
I mean, Nina made a presentation and she put it there, and you also, I think.
I wasn't here for her presentation. That's why I just said that. Do you put it at the midnight cry, or do you put it in between midnight and the midnight cry? Or it's in between. Okay, so
The first candlestick are midnight and midnight cry.
the first two are midnight and the midnight cry, and the Shekinah is right in between them. And then the two after that are 9/11 and Sunday law and 1989 and the close of probation. Okay, so where is, well, I guess that doesn't really speak to it. The church triumphant is established at the midnight cry, is what we're saying. More perfectly established at the Sunday law. So if you go to verse 1 of chapter 4, it says, and it shall come, and in that day, what day? Midnight cry. That's what it's saying, right? If we're going to stand on that logic. Yes? Everyone see that? Yeah. So what happens at the midnight cry? 7 women take hold of one man.
Daughters of Rome.
The daughters of Rome. Explain what you mean by the...
Protestantism, different sects.
Okay.
Take hold of the United States.
They're going to take hold of the United States. All right.
One nation. A man being a state.
And so when it says, only let us be called by thy name, that everyone's meant to be called an American.
I thought you said that the one man is the man of sin.
The one man is the man of sin.
That would make him the 8th.
Pardon me?
That would make him the 8th.
That would make him the 8th?
And it's opposite.
Modern Rome.
Modern Rome.
Yeah. 7 and 1.
And what's 7? Total, perfection, complete. 7 symbolizes those. What's a woman? So this is saying at the midnight cry, all the churches are going to come together with one man.
Isn't the one man they're talking about Christ?
No? Do you think at the midnight cry, all the churches of the world, 7 women are going to come into alignment with Christ?
No, they just want to be called by his name. They're not in alignment with him.
I don't know. Is there not a counterfeit of Christ?
Yeah, that's
Who is it? The man of sin. What is his name? Yeah, but what is his name that that all the churches want to be called named at the midnight cry? Catholic. Why? What does Catholic mean? Universal. This is the climax of the ecumenical movement. And what did they say about eating their own bread?
But they want to eat their own bread.
What does that mean?
They still have kind of their own doctrine a little bit, you know.
Bread is doctrine. So they're all going to retain their own doctrine, but they're going to come in the ecumenical movement, and they're going to wear their own apparel. What does that tell you? It tells you it can't be Christ, because you don't come to Christ and join with Him by wearing your own apparel. Okay, this is Catholicism. Only let us be called by Catholicism to take away our reproach. So what's the reproach? This is a matter of old public record. That's why I'm walking you through like this. Yes, my brother.
I know. Take care to not be named a sect.
That would be part of it, but at the midnight cry, God's church is established, and in verse 1 and 2 of Isaiah 2, that's what it's emphasizing. This is the establishment of the church triumphant at the midnight cry. So in verse 1 of chapter 4, it's showing the contrast to the church triumphant. All the churches of the world are going to come into unity with the Pope of Rome. But if you're not in unity with the Pope of Rome, what is the distinguishing feature that takes place here that distinguishes the church triumphant from those other churches? It's the first Sunday law. What is the Sunday law? It's the mark of the beast. It's his name. Let us be called by thy name. Yes?
Revelation 13 verse 7, you could be the reproach that no man might buy or sell, who's not in agreement with...
Yeah, if you don't have his name. What is his name? In chapter 4, verse 1, I'm arguing it's Catholicism, but how's it read in Revelation 13?
The number of his name is 666.
The number of his name is 666. And that you got to get victory over his name, his mark. I better look it up. Verse 2 of Revelation 15. And I saw as it were a sea of glass mingled with fire, and them that have gotten the victory over the beast, and over his image, and over his mark, and over the number of his name, stand in the sea of glass. So his name, his mark, his image are all, and who he is, the beast, is, does the image of the beast start here? The mark of the beast starts here. The number. What's the number? 666. And you have 360 here. I had a brother in Alabama telling me, and maybe some of you know this too. He said in the Hebrew that in Daniel chapter 3, there's some kind of Hebrew understanding with how they use words, that when you see that the statue was 6 cubits wide and 60 cubits tall, that in the Hebrew mindset, you always factor in another 6.
Yeah.
So you can, from Hebrew thought, you can see the 666 in there.
So the reasoning is it's the Hebrew, I guess you could say, architecture or building. If you have dimensions and there's
6 wide.
Yeah, and they always do it in 3 because it's dimensions, and the absence of the third means it's the same as the other.
So because you have 6 wide and 60 tall, you have to have some depth.
6 wide width and depth are usually, if one is left out, it's because it's the same as the other.
So you can assume that. So at one level, the statue is 360, 6 times 60. But this 360 can also be 666. And that's all coming in right here. And this is Isaiah 4:1. And taking away the reproach, I'm arguing it's the Sunday law.
What was the parable again?
And there's a Spirit of Prophecy quote that talks about the Sabbath in connection with the reproach, but I don't have it in front of me right now. Pardon me?
Just the apparel is obviously not Christ's righteousness.
Yeah, and you will find, if you want to get technical, that the Baptist Church has a little bit different definition of what justification is than the Lutherans do, and they have a little bit different definition than this Protestant church does. Methodism is more focused on works than some other. So that's the point. Is they're going to retain their definition of salvation theology, of what justification and sanctification is. They're going to wear their own garments, but there's no way you wear your own garments and come into connection with Christ.
Just as another witness to what you're saying, we read this verse in an evening worship. It's Psalm 69, 4-10. That has to do with the reproach.
Yeah. Psalm 69, let us get there. Psalm 69, 4-10. Go for it.
It says, "They that hate me without a cause are more than the hairs of mine head. They that would destroy me through mine enemies wrongfully are mighty. Then I restored that which I took not away. O God, thou knowest my foolishness, and my sins are not hid from thee. Let not them that wait on thee, O Lord God of hosts, be ashamed for my sake. Let not those that seek to be confounded for my sake, O God of Israel. Because for thy sake I have borne reproach, shame hath covered my face. I have become a stranger unto my brethren, and an alien unto my mother's children. For the zeal of thine house hath eaten me up, and the reproaches of them that reproach thee are fallen upon me."
So, that's pretty cool. So what's in there? The reproach is represented as the persecution that's being brought from the wicked. He's suffering reproach because he's standing for the Lord. Yes? Yeah, but where does this get placed? Where do you place this?
Well, right there in verse 10, like you were saying, when I wept and chastened my soul with fasting, that was to my reproach. No one put a weeping at the manor's cry.
Yes, okay, but that's good too. But I'm talking about verse 9. What's verse 9? When did the disciples remember that verse? Okay, go to John chapter 2, say verse 17. But it might not be verse 17. This is really a nice passage. 69, 4 through 10. 69, 4 through 10. Is anyone in John chapter 2?
Yeah.
Start with verse 17. Maybe.
And his disciples remembered that it was written, the seal of thine house hath eaten me up.
They remembered Psalms 69. When did they remember it? He's just cleansed the temple. The temple's just been cleansed here. So you remember that the zeal of his, it's right there. So you got lots of witnesses, it's right there. So the reproach, take away that reproach. The symbol of the reproach, what the whole world's getting called to do there at the midnight cry is accept Sunday sacredness, and there's going to be a group of people that refuse to do so, and they're going to suffer the reproach for doing so. Therefore, in Daniel 11, this verse 18, a prince of his own behalf shall cause the reproach offered by him to cease. Without his own reproach shall he cause it to turn upon him. So there's a prince in verse 18 that's going to cause the papacy's reproach to cease. And what's a prince in Daniel 11? Military leader. So what military leader, and I don't have a clue on the last reproach, what military leader causes the reproach of the papacy to end? Pardon me? Trump? And explain why you're saying Trump. Is that a lucky guess, or are you doing that because you've really thought this one through? Because I think you're right, but you need to be able to explain why you're right.
What you've said over the last couple of days about Trump, and it all fits in. It's
Okay, my brother?
Yeah, I didn't follow what the reproach of the papacy means.
Well, you remember, Sister White says that when the judgments of God are escalating, that not only the political leaders and the religious leaders are going to start saying, hey, it's these Sabbath keepers that are bringing the judgments of God upon us. So the Sabbath keepers, those people that are refusing to get in line with this first Sunday law and onward, are going to be accused of being, just like Elijah, the troublers of the people. So they're going to suffer the reproach, the persecution for being faithful about Sabbath.
And Trump is going to stop this?
Go to Revelation 17, verse 16. If you understand that Trump is not only going to be the last president of the United States, but the last Ahab, the king of the 10 kings. Revelation 17:16 says, verse 1 there.
And the 10 horns which thou sawest upon the beast, these shall hate the whore, and shall make her desolate and naked, and shall eat her flesh and burn her with fire.
The 10 kings are going to make her reproach come to an end.
But this is after the Sunday law.
Yeah, I know. This is at the end of the world. You explained that one for me. The next verse is the end of the world, or it's the end for Rome. Because it says, then he shall turn his face toward the fort of his own land. He shall stumble and fall and not be found. That's Daniel 11:45. So I don't think it's out of context to put verse 18 in with that. But my problem is, for me, what I haven't resolved is what the last reproach is. If this is the 10 kings burning the papacy's flesh, eating her flesh and burning her with fire, it says a prince, military king, ruler, 10 kings, for his own behalf, they'd been working with the papacy, they've been in cahoots with them. A prince for his own behalf shall cause the reproach offered by him to cease. They're going to bring the papacy to a conclusion. But the last part, without his own reproach, he shall cause it to turn upon him. I don't know what that means, if what I'm saying about Revelation 17 is correct. So that needs to be resolved. Maybe all of it needs to be resolved.
So the first reproach is the reproach of the papacy, but it seems like without his own reproach, is that from the a prince?
From the what?
From the prince.
Yes.
So the first one is from pagan Rome, the second one is from the prince. So there is reproach from papacy and a reproach from the UN.
Yeah, what is that?
Could be that the reproach of the papacy is his name, his number, and the reproach of the UN is that nobody can buy and sell.
Yeah.
Without his own reproach.
He shall cause it, and that isn't that the first reproach, to turn it upon him. So he's receiving also the mark of the beast and all that.
It sounds like your logic's getting close, but I don't know that it's there. Does anyone see what she's saying? But let's move on so we can get these in place, a few of them, so you know what I'm intending to do. And verse 23. After the league made with him, he shall work deceitfully, for he shall come up and shall become strong with a small people. Who is this and who's this small people? Who is it's probably fairly easy, but...
So, Jeff, just looking at Revelation 13, the he is the United States.
Okay, Revelation 13, the he is the United States in connection with what? Back in the reproach? Or
Back in the reproach, so the second reproach would have to be from a
the United States would be gone by then.
Yeah, so it's going to be the UN.
Okay, so it's the UN.
Because it's the United States that bring it in, but it's the United States that established the UN.
Okay, so...
And the chief king among them.
Yes.
So therefore, that chief king is the one that's really making sure that...
Yeah, I believe that. That's what I'm suggesting too. But what is that chief king's reproach?
Well, it's the number of his name. So it's by itself.
Well, why is it the number of his name?
Well, he causes all, this is verse 16 of Revelation 13, he causes all, he being the United States, both small and great, rich and poor, free and bond, to receive a mark in their right hand and in their foreheads. Or in their foreheads. Yeah. Or in their foreheads.
Okay, so go back to verse 18. Without his own reproach.
So without his, the papacy's gone now. So they're not enforcing this buying or selling. So his reproach was the enforcement of the...
So you're saying that's saying that it's gone too?
Yeah.
His own reproach, he shall cause it to turn upon him.
Either that or he's going to... The question is, what does turn upon him mean? Does that mean that he suffers a consequence for what he's done?
No, it means he's going to cause the reproach of the papacy to cease.
Yeah.
He's going to turn upon the papacy and eat its flesh and burn it with fire. But he's going to do it without his own reproach.
But that he's going to turn upon.
So if you're saying his reproach is the economic structure that the United Nations uses, then it might be inferring that his reproach is gone because the economy of the world has collapsed.
Yeah. Well, that's what I'm thinking. That it's going to turn upon him. That it's a negative consequence for him.
Okay. So small people, verse 23. What's small people? Yes.
At the beginning, Rome was very small, but by diplomacy, she began the world.
Okay, so put that in our day and age. After a league made with him, after what we're saying, the Seventh-day Adventist Church comes into a image of the beast relationship with the government of the United States to persecute the wise priests. After that league at midnight, the United States will work deceitfully because it's going to use this arrangement to persecute now those people that persecuted the priest. For he shall come up, that must be the United States, and shall become strong with a small people. Are we saying, like the history of Rome, that at this point the United States is a small people, or that when the United States is rising, it has a small people connected with it?
I don't know if this is right, but the strength of Rome was it was the first nation to allow worship of multiple gods, any god, it didn't matter. So you could be part of Rome and have a different religion to someone else and not have an issue. But they're all paganism, obviously. I'm seeing the United States and Trump has this small people that are supporting him, which got him 80% of the vote, which were 80% of apostate Christians, evangelical Christians.
He should become strong with a small people as apostate Protestantism.
Well, like I said, it could be wrong. But
No, I mean, there's a nice logic with that.
Yeah.
They're the one that put him over the top, and they're the one that are guiding his, like we read with Steve Bannon last night, they're the one that's guiding his worldview.
And they could be, that then leads to the mark of the beast down the track, which is the strength that they impose upon everyone.
Okay, so verse 24, just trying to put these, and if you may have question marks that I'm not bringing up on various little components of each verse that you can throw in. Verse 24, what is meant by the prey, the spoil, and the riches? And the reason I'm saying that is it's three. Okay, usually we'll see that as the three angels' messages, but he's scattering the prey, the spoil, and the riches in verse 24. I know that it's the treaties that he's building up the economic, but what is it? What's represented by those three elements? What is it? Prey, spoil. And if you, at least the students, if you're not writing it down, you may want to write these things down, because we'll probably assign them to you to go dig them out. All right. Storms overflow, both these kings should do mischief. Top powers. Okay, so I want to bring a problem I have up, that, and you can maybe work this out for me. In verse 28, Uriah Smith talks about two returnings. He says, "Then shall he return into his land with great riches, and his heart shall be against the holy covenant, and he shall do exploits, and return to his own land." Uriah Smith says this is two returnings. This is the returning after he defeats Mark Antony with the treasures of Egypt, and it's the returning after the destruction of Jerusalem in AD 70. Okay, so that's the two returnings in history. And then in verse 29 it says, and at the time appointed he shall return and come toward the south. So my point here, I'm going to put verse 29 and 30, return. And what I'm saying is, we're saying that the time appointed is what? Yeah, we're saying it's the Sunday law, but it's the end of what? It's the end of the 360 years, right? That begins with what? A double battle. 2 battles for the midnight cry. And what are those battles? Paneum and Actium. Really? I never saw that. That it's Paneum, take away the IUM, and Act, take away the IUM. Okay, so there's something there. But in any case, those are the double battles. So the point is we're understanding that in these 2 battles, the king of the south is destroyed for good. Right? Russia's gone for good. So why is it when he gets here at the time appointed in verse 30 that he's going to turn towards the south again? I thought the south was already dealt with.
South is Egypt, and Egypt is also a symbol for the world. So isn't the United States going out and conquer the world as Alexander did, as Napoleon did?
At the time appointed, okay, that I got 29 and 30. That I should have 28 and 29 up on the board. At the time appointed he shall return and come toward the south, but it shall not be as the former or the latter. What happened in the former and the latter? So is that how we understand it? Is everyone settled on what Tamina just said? That all it means is that what she's saying is that at the Sunday law, he's now turning his direction upon the United Nations, that's where he takes the United Nations, and that they're the South also. So he's turning himself towards Egypt, of verse 42.
Didn't we used to teach that Gorbachev, he goes to the UN, King of the South,
Yeah. Yeah, I don't have a problem. Okay, maybe you've resolved that. Okay, verse 37, the desire of women. What is the desire of women? Do you know? Here, let me tell you what I'm suggesting once again, is that in verse 36, when it's talking about the papacy, and everyone believes this is the papacy, not everyone, but I mean, it's the papacy. It's at the last phrases, it says, the papacy shall prosper till the indignation be accomplished, for that is determined shall be done. Go to Daniel 9:27. Daniel 9:27 says, and he shall confirm the covenant with many for 1 week, and in the midst of the week he shall cause the sacrifice and oblation to cease, and for the overspreading of abominations he shall make it desolate, even until the consummation, and that determined shall be poured upon the desolate. And that last word, desolate, is understood to mean desolator. If you get into the Hebrew of it, it's saying even to the end of the war, there's something determined that's going to be, the punishment of the desolator is going to take place at the end of the war. Okay, but that word determined allows you to go back to Daniel 11:36, and it says, for that is determined shall be done. Okay, this is the papacy coming to its end with none to help in verse 36. He's going to prosper until the indignation, and the indignation can be the 2520s, that illustrates the deadly wound in 1798, but it's pointing to the indignation that is the 7 last plagues. So he's going to prosper till the 7 last plagues, when the 10 kings are going to eat his flesh and burn him with fire. So verse 37, it's got to be repeating and enlarging. It's got to go back into history. And in verse 37, he's magnifying himself above all at the last phrase. So I'm saying you got to put it back there in verse 14, where he's going to exalt himself to establish the vision. So if you put it back in verse 14, it says, "But in his estate shall he honor a God of forces," that's a God of fortresses, that's military power, "and a God whom his fathers knew not shall he honor with gold and silver and precious things." And I skipped over, I was looking for what I wanted to say. In verse 37, he shall not regard the God of his fathers, nor the desire of women. What does it mean that he's not going to regard the desire of women? Anyone know what our standard historical understanding is?
Oh, the papacy who does not marry the chaste.
Okay, it's characteristic of a papacy, but some Adventists say that it's more about the desire of ages. That Christ is the desire of ages, okay, and that this is an attribute of the papacy, that they're not truly going to be Christians, okay. They're not really desiring Christ. Catholicism is not a Christian religion.
It's going to be that a woman being in church, that the papacy is not desiring the churches, because he's desiring the worldwide dominion and military dominion, state dominion, not really just the church dominion.
Mm-hmm.
He's more wanting the political structure. Okay, maybe so. All right. That's the little discrepancies, at least in my mind, that need to be clarified. And on Sunday, we'll come through and we'll start letting the brothers that have their material in their mind, because they prepared it, even though they had 10 minutes, they can give us some insight on the marriages, on the rebellion of Ptolemy when he slaughters the Jews in Egypt. That's you. Panium we've got. Actium. All right. My brother Vadim, you want to pray?
Our Father which art in heaven, we thank you very much for this time of study. We thank you for your Holy Spirit. And as we are going to our daily duties, we ask please that you may help us to keep these in mind and may think through them. We ask also forgiveness for our sins, and thank you for your love and kindness. In the name of Jesus Christ we pray. Amen.